Hello, friends. Welcome to today's show. I'm Dr. Helen, founder and Chief Engagement Officer of Dr. Helen Holton and Associates, and your host for Dr. Helen Speaks: Strengths, Resilience, and Leadership. As we continue to build a strand of leadership pearls, today we're going to look at levels of leadership. We won't cover them all today, so make sure you come back to capture them all as we go forward. When you think about a gorgeous multi-strand pearl necklace, what do you notice most about it? Now, I put my pearls on. I love this multi-strand. It's not authentically cultured pearls. However, it still makes the point. So I had to go pull them out for today. One of the things, now think about when you've been out somewhere shopping, vacation, just window shopping, or looking intentionally, and you want pearls. One of the things that you notice when you're talking about the real deal, and they make some pretty decent copies today. No two pearls are identical. They're like people. We're all unique with our own set of personalities, quirks, nuances that make us different from everyone else. Now, with pearls, you may notice similarities in size, color, shape, even luster. And there's a way, as my jeweler once taught me, how to even differentiate between the real deal and copies. However, it's the uniqueness that sets one strand apart from another, no matter how closely they're attached together. It's like leaders and leadership. The most successful leaders become that way by understanding the gifts they bring to the world. Now, once you have that understanding of yourself, it's the work you put in to develop, mold, and shape your gifts that make you successful. Before we go further, I want to do something that, as I've been looking at ways to grow in this space, I want to pause and give a shout out to the founder of the Win-Win Women Network, Paula Fellingham, who spent 25 years of her life creating, dreaming, developing, making this platform possible for women like you, women like me, who want to understand how we better show up in the world. When you think about, by all rights, we make up roughly 50% of the population. And how are we represented in the upper echelons of leadership, of leaders, the people who make decisions about the livelihoods of all of us? Which brings us to where we're headed, to understand that leadership is really a marathon. It's not a sprint by any stretch of the imagination. And so we're gonna work through levels of leadership and how you start from the ground floor to reach the peak. Just that image of that makes me think about something I've never done, and at this stage in life, no, it's not on the list anymore. But when you think about people who climb Kilimanjaro, want to get to the highest point on the planet, and I think it's Kilimanjaro. I'm not really been a mountain climber, but for those of you who have, maybe you can fill me in on what's the highest peak that people have reached within their human capacity and what it took to get there. What I will tell you is this: leadership has levels. And there's a book by John Maxwell that has a pretty good breakdown of the 5 levels of leadership. It's a good read and reread as you grow and develop who you are as a leader and how to grow your leadership. When you think about how am I best able to show up and be an effective leader for the people I lead, it begins with the investment you're making in your own leadership and understanding that leadership isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. So you won't get there in your first position. And there are many opportunities along the way to develop into a leader that people choose and want to follow, not just because you're the leader, but because of what they see in you and how you have developed your leadership. And that really is a big deal. And so the book I'm referring to, and I should remember the title, it's Developing the Leader in You. It first came out in 1993. It was updated in 2018, and I really appreciate it. So I have to give a shout out. Thank you, John Maxwell, for continuing to be that leader that leads others. Not because they have to follow you, but because they choose to, because of the wisdom you dispel and share. And I'm looking forward. He's got a new book coming out March of 2023 that, is just going to be awesome. For someone who has spent their life and has authored over 80 books on leadership, I'd say they have a thing or two to say about leadership. And it's interesting how I begin to hear more and more leaders, as my leadership is growing, reference leaders that have pointed them in the direction that they want to go or help them to do more, to serve more, and help make the world a better place. Les Brown is one of those. There's so many speakers I know today that reference Les Brown and how he poured into them to be better speakers. And there's a friend of mine, Andy Henriquez, who once said he asked, who's a mentee of Les Brown. And when he started out, he says, I want to learn to be a better speaker. What do I need to do? And Les Brown summed it up in 2 words. He said, speakers speak. Plain and simple. You see, leadership, we make it more complicated than it has to be. And so what we're going to look at today is how do we take this to another level? Because the greatest things about leadership that we know today have been time-tested and truthful messages, like climbing the mountain of leadership, where we're going to spend some time with these levels and work to help you determine where you are on your journey to become a better leader. Now, here are the levels of leadership shared by one of my leadership role models for decades. And with anything else, you begin on the ground floor, which is level 1, which takes us to that place of position. Now, position speaks to your identity into leadership. Did it begin for you in high school or college? Was it on your first job? One of the most important leadership lessons I learned was on my very first job at the age of 15. Yes, and I will tell you, that is really where my leadership journey began. And it began with the Golden Arches. Now, in case you don't know what the Golden Arches is, let me tell you. It's McDonald's. Yes, I began my path into leadership working at McDonald's at a time, and the manager of our store was a woman. Now, it wasn't that common when I did it. There are a lot of women managers in retail and the food industry today, but not so much then. And I will tell you, we were an award-winning store. And when I look back, not then I couldn't see it. However, today it's very crystal clear to me that number one, she was a good leader, and she was a good leader because she ran a tight ship. And when I say a tight ship, it wasn't one that made you feel like, you were on pins and needles every time you walked in. It began with the training on day 1. Well, it began before then in the interview process. And I remember her saying, When you come into this store wearing that uniform and standing behind that counter, the customer comes first. The customer is always right. And you serve that customer because that's what makes it possible for you to have your job. Okay, easy enough, got it, check, check. How you respond determines whether or not your leadership is really for you. All of us aren't meant to be in leadership roles, or at least not leadership roles where we're seeking to get to the top. Well, at the age of 15, I didn't have all the answers. However, I had a good role model that demonstrated what success looked like to be a leader. I'm going to tell you a little more about that story because it was one that, to this very day, and my manager at that time was Renee Mercer. I need to look her up and see where she is in the world. And that after all these years, and I won't say how many it's been, but she sticks in my mind. Everything I know about customer service began with my job at McDonald's at the age of 15. And customer service is really an important part of leadership, whether you recognize it or not. And what I was privileged to see was really the surface level of leadership and the benefit of being an award-winning store. Everyone likes to be recognized for the good that they do and how they lead. So it wasn't about just her leading us, but being a store that set a bar for other stores to achieve success. So here we'll go into the 5 levels. At level 1, people follow the leader because they have to. It has very little to do with influence because this is the entry level of leadership. You don't have a clue what it means to be an influential leader. You're still getting your feet wet and learning to be a leader yourself. You're on the first rung. And the experiences you have here matter because they're going to impact the trajectory of where you go from this position. So whether you started out in high school or college, in college, there are all sorts of clubs. Like in high school, they're a little more advanced. In college, a broader context of people to engage and interact with. Think about it. Were you in the Student Government Association? Maybe it was the high school or college newspaper. Maybe it was Future Business Leaders of America. There was a chapter when I was in high school. Yeah. What are some of the characteristics of level 1 position? That's the first level of leadership. It's position. What position do you hold? And it's always entry level at level 1. It's on the ground floor. This is where you get to soak up and appreciate those who are above you as leaders, if leadership is something you're after. And if you're here, I would say and believe firmly, leadership matters to you. So what are some of the level 1 characteristics? When you're at level 1, your security is based on your title more than your talent. Yes, maybe you've had some assessments to get in the door or other things like that. But you don't know what you don't know. You just know you have a title. Maybe you have an office, maybe a cubicle. Today, you may even be working from home or corporate hoteling where you rent some space or sign up for space in the office when you need to be there as a leader. So keep that in mind. Level 1 characteristics are, number 1, security is based on your title, not your talent. More than your talent. You're developing your talent. Another characteristic of level 1 leadership is that you rely on your leader's influence instead of your own. Keep in mind, you really don't have much influence at level 1, or you haven't acquired any yet. Influence is really about who follows you. Now, there may be people who follow you not because they want to, but because they have to. That's level one. And the third characteristic is that you can't get people to follow you beyond your defined authority. This is not the position to let the position define you as a successful leader. You're still on the ground floor. Now, don't let it go to your head. This isn't the place to think you've got it all and you're ready to go. I'm going to run through the other 4 levels because we're going to get into those in the next few episodes. So level 2. Level 2 is about permission. It's here that you begin to understand relationships. People begin to follow you, not because they have to, but because they want to. Think about as you moved from that first ground level of position. You're in the door, whether it's the leadership, the management trainee program, or your first professional job where there are people who don't have degrees or credentials to put them in a position of being an exempt employee. Exempt employee, yes. Permission. It's here that you begin to understand relationships. This is where you begin to listen to those who you report to a little more keenly because you're realizing you didn't really have people who listened to you because you had authority, you had a title. Permission is level 2, where you're focused on relationship. Now, level 3 has to do with production. People begin to follow you and you've been elevated to this level because of what you've done or produced for the organization. This is where others on your same level, everyone's not going to be promoted at the same time or elevated to the next level simply because they're in position. This is where evaluations and measurement and reviews come into play to determine, are you ready for the next step up in the organization? Production, results. What are you producing that others are catching an eye to what you're doing and who you are? Then we move on to level 4. Level 4 is people development. You're gaining followers now because of what you do for others. And I love this because this is moving you into the place and space of value. You're beginning to realize when I serve others and value them, it's the investment in the talent you lead and others around you who observe that you're defining your role, not based upon it's all about me, but it's all about how I'm bringing others with me, how I'm taking what I'm learning, what others are pouring into me, and putting that right back out. Yeah, it's an important element to be mindful of. You're moving from production to people development. Production is about results. It's not necessarily about people. People development is about human beings. Seeing them, hearing them, pouring into them, helping them to accomplish some of what you have been able to accomplish by those who were leading you and help you to grow and move higher. Then there's level 5, the pinnacle of leadership. This is reaching Pikes Peak or Kilimanjaro, sticking your flag in the ground, saying, woohoo, I've made it. And what happens here? People follow you because of who you are and what you represent. This is where your greatness gets to shine. And your greatness is shaped by those other 4 levels that have helped you reach this place. At the pinnacle is where you begin to think about and contemplate legacy. What am I leaving behind? How am I touching lives of people in a significant way that when I'm no longer here, not just as a leader within the organization, even if it's your own organization, but when you've decided It's time for me to step back and have a different level of life. Some might call it retirement. Others might call it it's time to have more fun without the responsibility. However, leaders always seem to find other ways in which to continue to lead, not necessarily in a formal way. It could be in a volunteer capacity, helping support your community, all of these things. The pinnacle, level 5. So level 1 is position. Level 2 is permission. Level 3 is production. Level 4 is people development. And level 5 is pinnacle. And I promise you, there's so much to unpack in these 5 levels that we're going to discuss and delve deeper into over the next few weeks to really get us charged up and ready to go. As we're planning, with each quarter of a year, it's a great time to look back and assess, what have I done to move forward? Always reminds me of the Sankofa bird. Arlene Rankin, professor, said once, the way in which we think of ourselves has everything to do with how our world sees us and how we see ourselves. Successfully acknowledged by the world. It's like I'm always saying, we want to help others see and be seen. Why? Because it matters. It really does. It really does. And there are many things that play into this. So when you give serious consideration to what you want for your life, for your leadership, it really happens when you have an awareness and an intention that when you consistently focus on what you want, when you apply the P2 punch, persistence and perseverance, because the journey won't always be easy. When you use your resilience to help you get to what you want, to be the best you. And as I always say, you got to remember to think, be, and do more, to produce more, to help more, to serve better, to be the kind of leader that the world needs more of today. Now, you might be saying to yourself, what more can I do? I'm already tapped out. Don't go there, that place. No. If you are, then it's time to think about how are you balancing your goals in life with how you care for your life. As a strengths, resilience, and leadership coach, you may believe that I've got this all figured out, and I don't. Just as I coach others, I have coaches that coach me. To be the best that you can be, you've got to be willing to stretch, to grow. As I said early on, the most effective leaders are lifelong leaders. It's like that movie, The Never-Ending Journey, The Never-Ending Story. I remembered I rented it for my niece and nephew to see one day, and they got so hooked on the movie, we couldn't go out to do what we were going to do because they wanted to watch The Never-Ending Story. I sat with them for a while, and I'm telling you, it was like the never-ending story. Developing your leadership to be the best leader that you can be is what we do at Dr. Helen Holton and Associates. We help you level up your leadership by leveraging your strengths because you have them. We all have them, and they're not the same for any of us. So you want to level up your leadership by leveraging your strengths. Secondly, you want to learn to manage your weaknesses. You're never going to be able to make them go away. And we all have them. We all have them. I call it the normalizing effect. We all have them. But the third thing you want to do is build resilience. You see, resilience is something we're not born with. It's something we build throughout ourselves. throughout our lives. Resilience is the power to help you persevere and push through to what you want for your life. What is the outcome of that? Oh, when you do those three things, it's inevitable for you not to have more success, less stress, and greater joy in your life. And you may be saying, well, Dr. Helen, how am I supposed to measure whether or not I'm achieving that? Uh-oh, there are three ways for you to measure your success. Number one, an increase in your performance. And you know what that is better than anyone else. And having regular coaching sessions or reviews with who you report to. Even if you're at the top, in most instances, you've got a board of directors or an advisory board or someone that helps you continue to grow and stay on top of your game. Number two, by increased production. Whether your business is in producing products or delivering services, productivity matters. And it's a measure to assess how you're achieving more success with less stress and greater joy. That's the reward we all want at the end of the day. And lastly, an increase in your prosperity potential. Yes, that's the biggie, which encompasses profits. So I did not forget the bottom line. I just incorporate it within prosperity potential because it's not always about dollars and cents. It's about the prosperity that you measure intrinsically, externally, and internally. Doesn't that feel good to even think about that? However, it does require you to spend some time deciding what your intention is to pursue what you want, what you really want for your life. That's your next step. It's the course that you map out for yourself. And oh, by the way, if you're on that path and it's not where you think you want to be, hey, make a new path. Take a different direction. Wedded to staying in the same thing you started out with 1, 5, 10 years ago, if it's not bringing you joy, if it's stressing you out, oh my goodness, change it. Don't stay with it. It's not worth it. What I've learned is the best way I can support you is to stand with you and support your desires, your dreams, and your willingness to lead with the best of who you are, to do what you do on purpose. And when you decide you're ready to step into living, to grow and develop your leadership on purpose, is when you begin to have better control over your destiny. It doesn't mean you'll get there without any hiccups. However, you'll get there with greater intention and focus, helping you as a leader to stretch and grow and uncover the truth of who you are and what you want is the greatest value I can bring to you. My number one goal is to motivate, inspire, and help you change your reality by supporting your move forward in the pursuit of your dreams and desires. Your greatest you deserves nothing less. I'm ready for your breakthrough to your best you. How ready are you to take that step? Dr. Helen Speaks is a resource to help you get where you want to be. Each week, we explore topics, discover and uncover ways to level up your leadership. We're here for you every Tuesday, same time, same place, 10 a.m. Pacific time and 1 p.m. Eastern time. Now, I want to leave you with, I love Michelle Obama and her Becoming. And one of her quotes on success says, I have learned that as long as I hold fast to my beliefs and values and follow my own moral compass, then the only expectations I need to live by are my own. I wish that for you, and you deserve nothing less. I'm Dr. Helen Holton, your strengths, resilience, and leadership coach, who shows up here every week to empower you to live your best life ever.